Good morning. Here at Daywalker Customs, we're going to be working on a camera strap today. My husband made a request to have me make him a camera strap with some fleece to put on the neck so that it would be more comfortable to wear. And so after about 3 times, I finally got it right. And so I'm going to share with you what I did, my technique for making the camera strap today. So let's go through the pieces and parts that I used to make the camera strap. First of all, we have these 1.5-inch buckles. This is for the main connector of the webbing strap. And then we have 2 4-inch pieces of the webbing. This is the 1.5-inch webbing. We have 2 12-inch pieces of the 1/2-inch webbing. And my husband's camera took 1/2 inch. I made this pattern for the leather connectors. I have 4 of these cut out. They are going to go together like this to connect the 1.5-inch webbing to the 1/2-inch webbing like this. And then we're going to use some double-sided tape. And I've got little connectors here for the 1/2-inch webbing. This is a slider. And I can show you how to put that on. Obviously, we have the 1/2-inch webbing and the 1.5-inch webbing. And then my camera strap that I'm going to be making here today is actually using 1/4-inch webbing, but I had trouble sourcing the hardware, so I just took it off of my own camera. So this is where I got the hardware for that. But the 1/2-inch hardware and the 1.5-inch hardware was really easy to find. It's just I've been having trouble with the 1/4-inch. So I kind of stole that off of my other camera strap to use. And then lastly, we've got a piece of fleece, and this is cut 16 inches by 5 inches. And that's what we're going to be using today to make this camera strap. So let's get started. First, we're going to start off with how we connect our 4-inch 1.5-inch webbing, the 4-inch long 1.5-inch webbing, and that is going to connect to this side of our plastic connector, and it's just going to loop through like this. So that's all that this is going to do on this side to hold that. Just put some clips on there, and I'm going to have 2 of those. So we have 2 of those, 1 for each side. And then the 1/2-inch webbing, this is how we put this through. Make a loop, make sure you don't have a twist in your loop. And then you're going to take the end and you're going to go from the bottom up through the hole, over the center bar, and then loop down and go through the other hole. And then you're going to want to pull the bottom one just a little bit longer than the top one. So push that through, give me a little bit more length there. And then I'm going to pull the bottom one and make the top one a little bit shorter, because this will be the end that I connect into the leather connector. So that's how you loop that. And then this loop right here is what connects to the camera itself. So this is the loop that's going to go this way from the camera. And then this connects to here like this. Okay. And then this connector is actually going to go on your, this is a piece of 1.5-inch wide webbing by 32 inches long. And this is where we put this connector on, and I'll show you how to do that. So you can take the connector with the teeth, and you're actually going to go up through the hole that's closest to the teeth. Make sure that if you've put your other connector on, make sure you're straight. And then you're going to pull this down through the other hole. It makes a strong way to connect your camera strap, but it's also adjustable. So, and then I usually do about 4 inches from my strap, a little bit more than 4 inches. There we go, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I can mark my center because I want it to be adjustable, so when I put it on, I've got a little bit of adjustment on each side. So then I'm going to put this together and mark the center of my strap. Right there. So that's my center. And now I need to prepare my fleece. And what I'm going to do for my fleece is I'm going to finish 3 sides here. And the reason why I do that is so that it's already pre-finished with a seam or a hem as I'm going to connect it to this piece of webbing. So what I do is turn it over to the wrong side, and I'm going to use this 1/4 inch double-sided tape. And I'm going to put it on both ends, both short ends. And then I will put it across the top. Give yourself a little bit of fold room on the end. You could even attach this after you folded your ends. Okay. So you pull the tapes off and fold them over. See, a little close on that end. Yep, see, I should have added it after. There we go. Okay, and then I'm going to fold this top seam over. And I'm going to want to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to want to stitch down the 3 sides here. And I usually stitch it about 1/8 of an inch from the edge, a little more, between 1/8 and 1/4. Don't want to go quite to 1/4. And I'm going to stitch all the way around on that. Okay, so now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew my seam along here. So take a couple of stitches forward and back. And when I come to the corner, I'm going to put my needle down and raise my foot and turn my fleece, and then continue on across the top. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to stop with my needle down. And then I'm going to turn and finish up this 3rd side. Make sure I back stitch and then clip my threads. So now I've added a seam. You can kind of see it along there. About 1/8 of an inch, maybe just a hair more than 1/8 of an inch seam on all 4 sides here. Okay, now that I have sewn around my 3 sides of my fleece to give me that finished edge, it's time to attach it to my webbing here. And I'm going to want to make sure I center this, so I'm going to mark a center point here with a pin on my fleece. That's my center. And then I'm going to want to, I have my center marked here, and so I'm going to want to turn this so that it is right side down. So my clips are sticking up and my folded part of my webbing is on underneath of the main strip of webbing here. And then I'm going to want to make sure that I put my center point just about together on the center. It can be off a little bit, it doesn't have to be exact, but you want to get it as centered as you can. So now that I have my center points marked, now I'm going to take my 1/4 inch double-sided tape and I'm going to run a strip along the wrong side of the raw edge here. So this is the edge that I did not seam. And then you pull the paper off of that. And I'm going to turn this over onto the webbing like this. And you're going to want to make sure that you have enough to pull this piece all the way to the other side, to the edge. So you may not want to come or just adjust it so that this part of the fleece will give you enough room to do that. And I'm going to do it not quite to the edge, but you may have enough there that you can do it to the edge. It'll depend on your seam, really. And then I'm going to pull this so that it's over like this. Just double check to make sure that it pulls all the way over to the edge, and it does. So then I'm ready to take my next piece of double-sided tape and put it along the finished edge here. And I'm running out of tape, which would be the top, basically, of my fleece here. And that's going to help hold it on when I sew. So I'm going to want to fold this over, make sure it's nice and tight, fold this over to the edge, and make sure you tuck in the little edge here so that you have a nice finished edge on both ends. And then just pull this up so that it will run right along the edge of that webbing. I want it to be nice along the edge, right there, because that's going to be the edge we're going to sew on. So then once you have that in place, then put some clips in to hold it. All the way across. Tucking that end down a little bit and then pull this up. And so then you should have that pinned in on your webbing all the way across. And we're going to sew the 3 sides. We're going to sew to both ends across this to close that in, and then the other end. We won't be sewing across the top because you've already got a nice folded finish there. So you don't need to sew that part. So we're going to take it to the machine and stitch that down. Okay, so we're going to bring it to the machine and we're going to sew the end and across to the other end, and take it nice and slow. I've already broke a needle once. I put a 90-14 jeans needle in this to kind of help with the bulk, but it is quite bulky, especially here on the end. So start slow, take a couple of back stitches, go nice and slow across this. This is the bulkiest part of this. Make sure you have a nice, sharp, fresh needle in too. That always helps a lot whenever you're sewing bulk. Okay, and when I get to the corner, I'm going to put my needle down, lift up my feed dogs and my foot, and turn this. And then I'm going to start across the back here. And again, I want to keep my foot even with my fleece. So I'm coming in about 1/4 of an inch, maybe just a tad more than 1/4 of an inch. But I want to keep a nice straight line coming across here. So that's why I keep that edge of my foot right along the edge of the fleece. And when I get to the other end, of course, I'm going to want to put my needle down and then finish stitching across the other end here. Okay, so we have that sewed on now. That looks nice. We've got a nice even seam across both ends and across the edge here. Tacking that down, it looks pretty good on our web for the back of our neck. It'll feel very nice. So the next step is to do the connectors. So I've brought in some glue. Actually, it's rubber cement, but it works really well on leather. And if you're using leather, you can use rubber cement or you can use leather glue. Either way, it really doesn't matter. You just need some way to adhere these pieces to each other so that they're not going to go slipping around when you sew them. And so I'm actually using Elmer's rubber cement. Works pretty well. Make sure you put paper down on your table to protect your sewing surface, but just basically put a layer. It doesn't have to be a very thick layer, just a thin layer. And you want to put it on both sides. Oops. Get back over there. Make sure you get all the way to the edge because that's the part that you want it to really hold, is that edge. And you're going to let those stand for a couple minutes, not too long, but a couple minutes, because it makes them tacky, and then it will hold together better. And then you're going to want to apply a little bit to each side of your pieces that are going to end up going into this. And it's just going to be a little bit on the end of each of these, not much, maybe 1/2 inch here. Kind of stick that on there, about where I'm going to want it to go. See, it's not tacky enough. It needs to get a little more tacky. Might not have enough glue either. Just a little bit on each side, not much. And then the same with these, and probably have to take the clips off. And just hold it with your fingers, but you want just a little bit on each side. Again, not probably more than 1/2 inch, just enough that you're going to be clipping in. And that's just so this will adhere to the connector pieces. Now I will say that I am going to go stitch this on my industrial machine because this is a thicker leather. And I know my domestic machine, based on the stitching that I did earlier with the strap, I know it's not going to handle it. So if you're using a very thin leather or just a vinyl or even a piece of fabric, you should be fine on your domestic machine. But if you're sewing leather like I am, you've got 2 thicknesses of your strapping, you've got your leather, 2 thicknesses of leather, and in both cases, that's pretty thick. So I don't want to be breaking needles on my domestic machine. So I'm going to do this. Okay, so I'm going to stick this down approximately where I want it to be. Take my other side of my leather and lay that on top. Needs to come down just a little bit further. I'm probably pulling this piece of the webbing in probably almost 3/4 of an inch, I think. And then this one's about a 1/2 inch. And I'm going to press that down. Make sure my edges get as even as possible. You can always trim them up a little bit later, but you want to make them as even as you can get them. So it's going to look like that when I stick it down. Do the same thing with the other side. And I'm going to want to make sure that I put this next to each other so that I can make sure that my webbing is sticking out about the same distance. So I want them to be even. So I'm going to put that even with it and then make sure that it's real even there. Stick this in here. And then I put my top on. Kind of like making a sandwich. With my webbing as being the peanut butter and jelly of my sandwich. Okay, it's not quite in there straight. You want to make sure that it's nice and straight. Get it stuck down. Compare the two, make sure that they look even. Yep. They look pretty even. And you can even let these set for, 15, 20 minutes just to kind of let that glue set in there. You could put something heavy on top of it to kind of hold it down and let it set. And then I'm going to take mine to my machine and then I'm going to sew. And you're going to sew right along about 1/8 of an inch in all the way around. And I'm going to do that again, like I said, on my industrial machine. But if you haven't got an industrial machine or you don't have a heavy duty machine, just pick something other than leather. Use cloth or another piece of fleece or just a piece of like upholstery canvas or something that's a lot thinner to be able to sew this down. Because when you're running through 2 layers, you can see how thick that is. 2 layers of leather and then 2 layers of your webbing. It gets quite thick there. And I know my machine is just not going to handle that. So I'm going to go sew this and then I'll come right back. Okay, so I'm going to pull the threads up here. And if I give this a yank, it lifts a little loop here. And I can get a hold of that loop and pull that through. That went with not this thread, but with this thread down here. And then I'm going to tie it off on the back side here. And I usually knot it 2 to 3 times just to make sure that I get a good knot in the back. Pull it extra tight. That kind of helps to seat that thread down into the leather a little bit more. And then when I get that in there, my scissors, clip that pretty close to the edge. If you have one of those little burners that just cuts the thread or burns the thread a little bit, you can get the ends. And then pull the next one through, get that loop. Do the same thing, tie that off. Since I'm getting my head kind of in the picture, I know because I'm trying to look closely at this, You'll probably notice that I have this gear on my head. It's actually has an LED for a light here on the end, and then it has these magnifying glasses. And you just put it on your head and then you can see things much clearer because it's magnified. So that's what I've got on my head, if you're wondering. Helps me to see here what I'm doing with this thread. I'm going to do the same thing over here. And there you have the finished connectors here. Then you can take your strap and connect your ends into your strap. And there you have it. Your camera strap is finished. And I can't actually show it to you on my camera because I'm videotaping with my camera, but I'll take pictures and put them here at the end so you can kind of see how it's attached. But that is the camera strap right there. So pretty simple. Just to reiterate, we have our thin, mine is 1/4 inch, but you can use 1/2 inch webbing with the connectors for the 1/2 inch webbing. We have pieces of either leather or canvas or just fabric to put for your connectors. You've got your 1.5 inch webbing. This is a 4-inch piece connected to your plastic connectors with another 1.5 inch webbing that is cut to 32 inches with a 4-inch adjustment side, and then you have your fleece, which was cut at 16 by 5 inches and then folded and seamed onto your webbing. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope that you'll join me again for future videos. This is Daywalker Customs saying thanks again and happy crafting.